Sitting in this chair seat today. It's temporary, it's for today only, as council figure out a new chair because Councillor Duffy has had to step down for health problems. So I will be pinch hitting for today only. And I will make a note that Councillor Twill is absent this evening from our meeting. Okay, so I'll call the meeting to order. Do I have any declarations of conflicts? Okay. Can I get an approval of the agenda?
So
Moved by Councillor McCabe, seconded over here by Mr. Mann. Okay. And can I get an adoption of the minutes from our last meeting on June the 7th? Moved by Councillor McCabe, seconded by... Okay. Now, any business arising from the minutes before we move on? Your Worship, you usually have something to add.
you're doing such a great job. I want to keep moving.
Okay.
There was one thing I just want to clarify in our minutes, I'm sorry, but I'm just trying to find the section where I know Councillor Twill had spoken about compensation for residents in Ward 9 with the new project, feeling that that should be something the city would consider. And I have received some calls from residents concerning this issue, and I clarified that the city is not in a position to provide compensation. So we just need to make sure that the information we're putting out to residents would be something that would actually be something we did versus something we don't do.
Ellen, you'll make sure that's in the minutes? Great. Maybe it's something too that comms could put out as a general press information to help.
Was that from the public?
Yes,
Yes.
it was.
That's great meetings.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to reports, and you're up, Emily.
All right.
Give it over to you.
Thank you, folks. So I have before you here today a variance request. It's regarding 20 Bishop Street, which is just north of Houston Street and just east of University Avenue. It's a one-way street there. So the property owner is requesting permission to perform or construct an addition to the existing, what we would call a non-conforming single detached dwelling on the lot. We call it non-conforming because it doesn't meet current zoning bylaw requirements for the zone that it's located in. And for that reason, there's a clause in the zoning bylaw that requires it to go through the major variance process for any work on non-conforming buildings. So again, it's on Bishop Street. You can see the location there outlined in white. So I will note that it's the understanding of the property owner that this lot contains 2 parcels. So it's their understanding that it contains an easterly parcel here, the longer one, and a westerly parcel, the shallow part of it. So the Planning and Heritage Department has requested a boundary plan of survey from the property owner to confirm the parcel boundaries. We received a deed, like a legal description, but we don't have a survey showing those boundaries. So we're requesting that of them. They haven't provided it yet. Until it is provided, it's the assumption of our office that it is one parcel. So what is outlined in white there is the parcel, and that's about 304 square meters in size, and it has a frontage of about 13.8 meters along the south side of Bishop Street. So this parcel as a whole would be considered undersized. As I mentioned, it doesn't conform with current requirements. The lot is zoned R2, low density residential 2, and the existing single detached dwelling on the lot, it has a side yard setback deficiency, and again, the area and the frontage don't meet current requirements. So that's what triggered, again, this variance being before you folks today. So at the time that, or prior to the variance application coming in, there was some kind of background discussion with the property owner through what we call a comprehensive zoning inquiry. Through that process where they were inquiring about like what's generally permitted on the lot. And at that time, they outlined their intent to us. If it is after the boundary plan and survey process confirmed that it is 2 parcels, they want to develop the westerly parcel. Sorry, this part of the parcel right there, with a single detached dwelling. And today that part of the parcel contains surface parking that serves the existing single detached dwelling on the westerly part of the lot. So this addition that they're looking to do is is to the existing dwelling on the westerly part of the lot, and it's right here as they're showing it. So this is what they submitted at the time of the major variance application on May 26th. And then we did the public notification process, the standard process, to notify surrounding property owners of the variance request. We received 3 letters through that process, and they were all in support of the application. Following the notification process, we received, updated drawings from the property owner. Further to the addition on the back portion of the existing dwelling, they're looking to do a balcony off that rear addition. It's a 2nd floor balcony, as you can see. They're looking to do a main floor deck underneath that, and then to do a garden shed on the rear portion of the lot. So this is kind of additional information that we received just last week. And for that reason, I just wanted to note this information wasn't included in the public notification process. So what was included in the public notification was just that there's this addition right here. And at the time there was a balcony on that side. They've since switched it to this rear part. So for your folks' information. So again, 3 letters of support, one of which was after the commenting deadline, but it's been circulated in her copy to you folks as well for your information. So from a policy perspective, there is support for this in the official plan, and that's through objective 3.2.1, and that is to ensure that new development is harmonious with its surroundings. So the applicant is looking to retain the existing single detached dwelling and just put an addition on the rear of that. It is a low intensity use of the lot. And then the footprint and height of the existing dwelling plus the addition is similar in scale to the adjacent residential uses. And from a zoning perspective, zoning bylaw perspective, the single detached dwelling is a permitted use. Although there is this non-compliance with the existing regulations, there is kind of a clause that states that no person owning a lot held in separate ownership from adjoining parcels having less than the minimum frontage or area required shall be deprived of the ability to make reasonable use of the lot. It is the opinion of our department that this addition to the single detached dwelling represents reasonable use of the lot because it's a low intensity in nature. And in regard to the side yard setback, just to note that this is related to the existing dwelling footprint. It's not related to the addition. The addition conforms with all the zoning requirements in terms of setbacks and height. For this reason, we think it's supportable. And another thing just to note, in regard to this parcel boundary that's in question, there is the zoning bylaw requirement that you provide on-site parking for each dwelling unit. So the owner's intent to, if it is 2 separate parcels, to develop the other parcel where the parking is right now. It removes the parking for the existing dwelling, and they want to do a secondary suite as well within this addition to the existing dwelling. So just to note that planning staff wouldn't be supportive of the development of that other parcel because it removes the on-site parking. As of today, we're looking at it as 1 parcel. It's providing parking for the existing dwelling, and then if they want to do the secondary suite, they're providing for that as well. It's achievable, so we would support that if it's 1 parcel. And then we talked about the balcony deck and shed. That's under review at the moment by staff. The building officials looking at that. And then us as the development officers will look at that too, just to ensure that it's compliant. It doesn't trigger any changes to the variance request, like the technical nature of it, but again, it just wasn't considered by surrounding property owners through the notification process. So based on this information, staff is recommending that you folks recommend to council to approve the variance request for this addition, subject to conditions that the dwelling addition meets building code requirements, which is standard, that if they want to do the addition plus the secondary suite, that there's no removal of on-site parking, so that requires it to be just as it is today with the parking on the side and one parcel. And that would meet the intent of the zoning bylaw. And that any additional work meets the building official and development officer requirements as well, like that deck and balcony, etc. So that kind of ties up my recommendation, folks, and just let me know if you have any questions.
Anybody have any questions? So Emily, basically they're asking for, they want to put an addition on the home that they already have.
Yes.
And within that addition, they're creating a secondary suite.
That was the intent. As of today, they're saying we're just going to do this addition to the dwelling and we'll deal with the secondary suite stuff. And whatever after this, the boundary plan of survey is finalized and they know what's going on with their parcel boundaries.
And so why do they need approval from us for the shed and the deck? Is that not usually just operational?
That's dealt with through the building and development permit process.
Right.
So I'm just noting, like, this is additional development of the site. It wasn't reflected in the notification. But it doesn't change the variance request in any way. It's just additional work. Yep.
And just one more, would it not have been easier to wait until you got confirmation whether or not it was two parcels or one?
So it was the property owner's wish that it goes before the planning board today. I guess, and they're here today, they can
Jason's
speak to
here.
this. Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's my understanding that they were having trouble retaining a surveyor within the time required. So in the meantime, they're trying to get this process in motion with the hope they can get their ducks lined up in time.
Right. Yes, Rosemary.
Emily, could you just explain again what the implications are if it is determined that it is two parcels of land?
So the applicant can confirm to you their intent, but it's our understanding that they're looking to develop the west parcel with a single detached dwelling and remove the parking. Obviously, that would have to go through the planning board process because it's a very small, if it is indeed a unique parcel, that west part, it's very shallow. It has a very limited frontage. There would be several variances required. And as a department, we wouldn't be supportive of that type of development because they're removing parking that currently serves the existing dwelling, and what they're looking to serve a secondary suite as well in the back in the future. So any on-site parking potential is removed for that existing dwelling.
The only other comment I had too is that the neighbors haven't been fully informed because of the changes.
Yeah, exactly. But again, that deck work and it wouldn't require variance to do that. We could determine that through the building permit review process. If it isn't compliant, we can ask for changes, modifications to meet our requirements. I guess the reason for the variance request was for this addition to the non-conforming dwelling. There's a subsection in the bylaw that says that requires a major variance to be approved. So I guess that's kind of why I laid it out for you folks the way I did.
So Madam Chair, I'm looking at a Google map of to the west, it's a green space.
So that's the owned by this.
I know.
Yeah,
Is that
exactly.
presumed, could be the second lot?
The single detached dwelling, and it contains the on-site parking that serves this existing dwelling on the lot. So it's green space plus surface parking space there. But it's the owner's understanding that that's a unique parcel, that west part
Yeah.
of it. And then where the existing dwelling is, that's its own parcel as well.
Thank you.
The owner is here. Does anyone have any questions for them? Does he have any questions or they have any questions for us?
If you folks don't mind, I may just run out
Is it
and
there
check
tomorrow?
with them. Yeah, just one moment.
Good job, Councilor Yank.
Bishop, you know where it is. I got too. That's the house there. So I think 16. It's parking.
I was confused about that too.
He is going to take the opportunity to speak with you guys. Just one moment.
Thanks for coming in.
Sure, yeah. I guess I'm a minute behind or so. The live feed is live within 30 seconds. You want me just to give you the Coles note?
Yes.
Yeah. So, should I keep this
You
on?
can take it off.
I can take it off, yeah. Okay. The, just one, really what I think we're looking at here today, or my request, is to be able to see, to request the major variance that will allow me to build the addition in the back of the home as if it were a single-family home. So I'm not applying for it to be with a legal apartment in the basement, nor does it have any sort of bearing on the lot next door. Really, all I'm asking for is the ability to build this addition on the rear of the home as it is. So you might be able to see from the plan, but the intent is to keep the streetscape, the look of the front of the home in character with the other homes that are on that street. So the finished look will be the same kind of windows, the same roof structure, a cedar shingled home. The back of the house has got a single pitch elevation. The window structure is a little different. A glass garage door in the back. It's more modern looking. That's going to be in the back of the home. So we're trying to marry some of the age of the street in the front with it being renovated in 2021 in the back. So that's the idea of the look. So it is my belief that the property they own is two lots with a shared PID number. So I have been able to engage Morris Land Engineering to complete a survey, and I think that sometime this summer in the coming weeks, we'll get their sort of confirmation back to agree that that's the case. So if we can get some confirmation that indeed it's two separate legal lots and planning, because of the zoning inquiry that requested, gives me the information, then we'll deal with it at that time. So it's my take on the matter that if they're two separate lots, then 20 Bishop, in fact, has been using the parking in this vacant lot forever in a day, but it is a single-family home. If it was my intent to put a secondary suite in 20 Bishop, the existing home, then I need to provide a new additional parking space that hasn't been there all along. So it would be my intention to apply to develop the vacant lot west of 20 Bishop as a single-family home and not put a secondary suite in 20 because I wouldn't have sufficient parking. So I understand from sort of the preamble that was put forward that would any sort of development of that lot would be wouldn't be supported by planning because it would in fact remove the one parking space that 20 Bishop currently has. And I guess my only point is that in fact it never did have a parking space. It's been squatting on this vacant lot for the last 70 years, but they're two separate lots. That's sort of a whole different matter altogether, but that's a little vision for the future. If it comes back that I can't develop the vacant lot, well, I can't develop the vacant lot. It has no bearing on today's request, which is to put an addition on the back of the single-family home at 20 Bishop Street.
Thank you. That's very clear now. I appreciate that.
Okay.
It was a good, yeah. Does anyone else have any questions for Jason?
Jason, and maybe Emily, if I go to your page 33 of our report,
Yep.
what you highlighted in red, I don't know if Jason has it. So that's the existing dwelling proposed addition. So is that going from 304 square meters to 540?
So, just bear with me, I'm gonna catch up with you here. So,
Page 33.
page 33.
Zoning development bylaw.
And sorry, can you repeat your question?
So it's a major variance. Is it a major variance on the side yard, the frontage, the lot itself?
So it's not your typical variance request. If you look at the major variance section of the zoning and development bylaw, it says where there is an expansion to a non-conforming building,
Yeah.
you must go through the major variance process. So it's determined major because of that section. It's not because of a quantifiable number. It's just because of the nature of the lot.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, so just a second question, Madam Chair. So if it's determined that we have two lots, will he have to consolidate those two lots to make one lot?
If you accept these conditions here, yes, yeah. That
So
would be
he'll
the
have to
ultimate.
come back here and consolidate them, right? Or can
It's a residential lot, so it doesn't technically
he have to come
require
back
that
here?
whole process, yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Anybody else have any questions for Jason?
I have a question, but you go ahead first.
I think I'm just confused today, my apologies, but it seems to me what you're saying is that you want to keep them as two separate lots so
I
that
do.
you can develop the second lot with a single dwelling house, is that correct? You don't want to consolidate them anymore?
I wouldn't be able to consolidate them if I wanted to build another home on a separate lot. So I guess that's the nature of my question that I didn't understand until just this moment here. So am I understanding it correctly that the variance, a condition of the major variance, if granted, is that I must also, doesn't matter what the survey says, I'm going to have to amalgamate the lots and not develop them? Or is it still a separate matter for?
So the reason for the consolidation question coming up is because of the parking requirement. We need to have on-site parking. It's a zoning bylaw requirement. We can't do variances for parking requirements. It's not permitted under our zoning bylaw. So that's why we're saying we need to consider it as one lot with the.
Two parcels.
Yeah.
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 But like anything, he can then apply for
He can
a
certainly.
change.
He can certainly apply
And for an exception to the bylaw, lots of people do.
No,
Not
of course, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So we don't want to
But,
lead him
um,
astray to think that the idea of him having a second residential unit on that lot is a moot point, that there, even though right now we don't have a bylaw that would allow it, we can make an exception, because we do it all the time.
Not through the variance process to the parking requirement, but if you wanted to do like a site-specific exemption, for instance, that could be possible.
Right.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
not through variance. The parking section of the bylaw specifically says variances don't apply for parking.
Right.
Yeah,
But there's still an opportunity for him to build another home on that if it's two lots.
through this site-specific
Right.
exemption process. that
Okay.
could be pros-
Does that make more sense, Jason? Okay.
But Madam Chair, we're still dealing with just the existing addition to the.
Correct.
That's what's before us today.
Exactly.
And that's what is recommended by the planning department, and that's what we have to deal with. What happens after the survey? That follows
That's a whole
through the
other-
department again and may or may not come back here.
Exactly.
So let's deal with what we know we're dealing with and move forward.
Great point.
Thank you, Jason.
I'm gonna move that we accept Josh's recommendation.
Second.
All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, so moved.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jason.
Thanks, Emily.
Okay. So next is a report from Laurel. It'd be 231 Cumberland Street. Thank you, Emily.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
moving slow today, getting some assistance. I hurt my back on the weekend, so that's why Emily's carrying my burden. So, this is an application for a variance at 231 Cumberland Street. And the property is zoned medium density residential zone, R3. And the property owner, Heather Moyes, is requesting a frontage and lot area variance to add an additional dwelling unit in the basement of the building for a total of 5 residential dwelling units. So this is the building. All the entrances to the building are to the side, and she is looking to locate an additional unit in the basement. So department records indicate that 231 Cumberland Street contains 4 documented legal residential dwelling units. In the R3 zone, apartment dwellings must have a minimum frontage of 82 feet, and the subject property has a minimum frontage of 72.8 feet. This is the site plan for the property. So the lot area requirement in the R3 zone is 1,237.9 square feet of lot area per dwelling unit, and the total lot area for the property is approximately 5,575.68 square feet. In order to increase the density to 5 units, she would need 6,189.5 square feet of lot area for that total property, which is let's start right along this boundary over. The yellow area is a shared right-of-way. So, therefore, the request for the variance is to reduce the required lot frontage from 82 feet to 72.8 feet in order to allow for the additional 5th residential dwelling unit, and to reduce the required lot area from 6,189 square feet to approximately 5,575.68 square feet in order to allow for the 5th dwelling unit. So the property, it's located mid-block between Euston Street and Longworth Avenue, and buildings in this area, they tend to be a mix and range from single detached dwellings to converted dwellings and small apartment buildings. It's within a 5-minute walk to the downtown Main Street and core, where various services, shopping, restaurants, and theaters can be accessed, and it's also a 5-minute walk to Holland College. The building contains 4 units, and as I said before, she's going to convert the basement to a 5th unit if the variance is approved. Existing parking for the development, it's located on site. This is all existing, and she does have 2 spaces out front. Parking layout is 45-degree angle parking, and the bylaw requires a drive aisle of 11 feet for 45-degree angle parking. So you can see the type of parking that she has, and then you have this drive aisle, the shared drive aisle. That shared drive aisle, it's slightly undersized. It's approximately 10 feet wide, so it is a bit undersized, but it is an existing drive aisle. So the site plan, it also indicates that parking from the adjoining building encroaches onto that drive aisle. You'll see this red area. These parking spaces are encroaching onto this aisle, and I mean, that isn't any fault of hers. That is an issue with the adjoining property owner, but I wanted to point it out. The parking space is shown on site, located at the front of the property. They can't be factored into the parking count because they also encroach on the city right-of-way. So the city right-of-way actually runs somewhere along here, where they show the property boundary. And this is common in the downtown core. The actual old city right-of-way is usually further back into the property boundaries. So, in accordance with section 3.93 of the Zoning and Development Bylaw, a notification letter was sent out to 59 property owners within 100 meters of the property. And deadline to submit written comments on the application was 12 noon today. After writing the report, we did receive 2 letters. They're included in your package tonight. And both letters were in opposition to the proposed variance. And they cited issues about parking and traffic in the area. if you didn't have a chance to look at the letters. So this property, it was actually, originally it was a church in the 1980s, and it was converted in the 1980s legally and has the 4 residential dwelling units legally. The R3 zone requires that apartment buildings have a minimum frontage of 82 feet and a lot area requirement of 1,237.9 square feet. And the reason for this is to ensure that lots within the medium density residential zone are large enough to accommodate reasonable density and amenity area for the residents that live within the buildings. So under the current zoning and development bylaw, this property would be considered a legal non-conforming building because it was approved legally. And the reason why we consider it legal non-conforming is because the property is undersized for frontage and for an apartment building. So with the 4 units, the property currently meets the lot area requirement of 4,000 and has 4,951.6 square feet of lot area. So it isn't undersized in lot area. It's not conforming. It's not non-conforming in lot area currently. But if the additional unit is added, the property will become legal non-conforming in lot area if the variance is approved, because you would need the 6,189.5 square feet. So staff feel that the request to add an additional 5th unit, it would be expanding on an already legal non-conforming use, and it further exceeds the requirements of the zoning and development bylaw. However, the board should also consider that housing and affordable rental units are in demand, especially in this area of the city, and this area of the city is conducive to people living in because you don't need to own an automobile to live here. Many services and amenities are available in the immediate area within walking distance to this property, and the property is also in proximity to educational institutions, government buildings, and other sectors of employment. It's also accessible to public transit. So during the current housing crisis, it is challenging for residents to find affordable housing in the downtown area, and there's various sections in the official plan that would support this request, and I've included them in the report for your reference. I've also included in the report a list of positive attributes, neutral attributes, and shortcomings for this application. So although there are many aspects of this variance that hold merit, and it is difficult for staff to support this request, given that the property already doesn't meet the frontage requirements for the zone, and by increasing the density, it would also become legal non-conforming in lot area. So it already exceeds what's permitted in the bylaw, so it is hard for staff to argue that an additional unit would allow the applicant to make reasonable use of their property. And there's a section in the bylaw, undersized lots, section 6.2.1, that talks about a person owning a lot that's held in separate ownership, making reasonable use of a lot. However, if the property owner would be required, if it is approved, the property owner would be required to obtain a building and development permit for the additional unit. And that unit would also have to meet National Building Code. The whole building wouldn't be required to meet National Building Code, but that one unit that is built would have to be brought up to code. But in light of all this, because the property is legal non-conforming currently, it's difficult for staff to support it, so therefore we are not recommending for the variance. If there's any questions, I can answer them.
Okay, yeah, I know, Bobby. I'm starting to decide if I was gonna call you Mr. Kenny or just Bobby.
That's interesting. Laurel, I drove by there today and there was very few cars parked there, so it was kind of hard to see exactly how it would work out, but is there any indication that there's parking problems? It looks very congested.
It does look congested. I'm going by the letters that were sent by residents. I mean, she does have 4 spaces on site, and then this space, the 5th space, is out in front of the building a bit, not the whole car, but the whole space. but it is. And then she has 2 spaces that are in front. One she's using for garbage containment, and the other, I believe she indicated she wouldn't use. But we couldn't count those into the parking count. The building is existing and the parking is existing, so it's an existing situation.
Any indication how big those parking spots are? And the reason why I ask that, there's quite a difference between a small car and the big half-ton trucks that are on the road today.
Yeah, I believe, from what I see, it's 2.75 meters wide, and then I'm gonna say they're approximately 18 deep. It's angled parking, so I mean, it is tight. They're, like, if they were to back out, they're backing out onto the street because they're backing out into that drive aisle. There isn't room to come out, back up, and then maneuver and drive out, but the bylaw just requires an 11-foot drive aisle.
Thank you.
Bobby, I had a brother live there in that building that they're talking about back in the 90s. And for a few months while he was waiting for his house to close here, and when he moved here. That whole area is full of apartments, even in back on the other side. The parking in there is unbelievably bad. You can't believe what it's like. You might have drove by there during the day, but in the evening and at night, you can't get.
Yeah, that's what I
you
said,
can't
there was
move
no
around.
vehicles in the parking.
And that whole street, and you see a letter from Dave Etchery and from the other beginnings. That street, people avoid going up that little segment, and will keep going up Houston to the lights before they'll turn up that. It gets that crowded. It's not good.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me.
Councilor McCabe, I believe you were.
And I think that there's issues with parking everywhere. With the one parking lot per apartment unit, we've had this conversation many times because many people have multiple cars. So, it's the fact that people aren't following the rules when they're moving into where they're moving into, because they really are only required to have the one parking spot, for sure. With this, and I know we have a requirement to have a parking spot, but you made some good points. It's downtown, and, could it be removed that the 5th parking spot, there was no parking? If they had the 5th unit in the basement, could there ever be an exemption made to that where they didn't have, where we said there you don't have a spot to park?
Well, I mean, technically, we're not really requiring it. I mean, they do have the parking on site. It's just that I'm pointing out it is very tight parking.
Yeah, and it will be, because through the letters, it's not about, the letters are basically saying people have multiple cars. One unit, they say, have 4 cars in that apartment building, but that's not the owner's fault. That's the resident's not, or the renter's not following the rules, right? But is this long-term rental, Laurel, or short-term rentals that she uses this for?
I believe long-term.
They're all long-term rentals, okay? Good.
Yeah.
All I need, thank you.
Again, it's another situation, Madam Chair, of a non-conforming building becoming more non-conforming and not fitting in that particular area at all.
Yeah.
That's
I mean,
the hard part.
It is a mix-up because there are a lot of things that would support this application, and I mean, you can look through the official plan and the bylaw, and I mean, our housing market, but from staff's perspective, it's hard to support something that does go against the bylaw. So, I mean, that's kind of the situation that we're in when we have applications like these.
Did they mention that it would be affordable housing? Or
There was no
Not
mention of
necessarily.
it, but I would expect that, I mean, these wouldn't be.
Is
high
the
renters.
applicant here?
yeah.
Actually, she isn't, and I think that is due to me. I've been out for a couple of days, and I did miss calling her, so.
Okay, that's disappointing because
I know.
I'm sure she would have been here and seems a bit unfair.
Yeah, I mean, she knows that the meeting is tonight, but I usually do try to call the applicants beforehand, so.
Right.
That's a oversight on my part, unfortunately. But I do
But she's familiar
know,
with the process. She was here just a couple of months ago.
she was,
Yeah.
but I mean, I do know that she has been working on this for a number of months. I think she started in February on this, and I mean, I think if she was here, she would, be speaking on her own behalf to support this, so. obviously.
Should we defer this application until maybe she has a chance to come in and speak?
That's up to the board.
I mean, does somebody want to put a motion on the floor? Do you want to put a motion on the floor for that, Councillor McKay?
I can either move to defer it, or my other option would be that I would be not supporting staff's recommendation. I think I'd be pushing for acceptance for the fifth apartment. So,
I would also support this. I think it's difficult not to support affordable housing in this location, even though the parking's not ideal.
so that would be my motion.
What would be your motion?
My motion would be that I would move not to accept staff recommendation on this application, but to allow the applicant to put the fifth
Okay.
apartment.
So we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a seconder? Okay. So all those in favor of Councillor McCabe's motion to support the application and not support staff's recommendation? Those opposed? Okay, motion carried to reject staff's recommendation and support the applicant. So does that mean we have to do a second?
No, this goes to council.
This goes to council, okay?
Is this your last one? Is this your last one?
No, I have one more.
Oh.
No, two more.
Yeah.
You may as well stay right where you are.
Okay.
If you wish. So our next item on the agenda is 88 Bracken Point Road for rezoning, and that's Laura again.
So, it's a request to proceed to public consultation to rezone a portion of the property located at 88 Brackley Point Road from R1L low density residential to R3T medium density townhouse residential zone and R1N narrow single detached residential zone, and to amend Appendix A of the official plan map from low density residential to medium density residential. So the property is bounded to the north by Pope Avenue with institutional and R1L zone, to the east by Pope Avenue and institutional zone land on the opposite side of the street. Actually, I think I went wrong direction, half blind. And to the west by Brackley Point Road. So the property is 3.04 acres, and the application is to rezone a portion of the said property. The proposal is to demolish the single detached dwelling and subdivide the property into 9 lots. So it's hard to see it, but there is an older dwelling that's located back here on this property, and this is the total area. The applicant is proposing to rezone a portion of the land to R3T, and he will construct 3 townhouse dwellings, and then they will consist of 2 6-unit dwellings and 1 4-unit dwelling. 2 lots are also proposed to be rezoned to R1N, narrow detached single residential zone. So this is the concept plan. These are the R1N lots, and these are the 3 townhouse lots. And the remaining balance of the property will remain as R1L zoning. And then this is a buffer zone, not a city buffer zone, but a private buffer zone the developer is proposing to block noise to the development. So frontage for the property, it's both on Brackley Point Road and Pope Avenue, and the main access to the development, it will be from a cul-de-sac off Pope Avenue. So this is the newly created cul-de-sac that would be built. Only 2 single detached dwellings are proposed to have access off Brackley Point Road. So you can see them over here. They will both access off Brackley Point Road. The applicant has also provided a traffic study to accompany his application. Usually when we deal with these kind of applications, it's the traffic study usually goes to planning board, and then we request a traffic study, but this applicant has gone out and done the traffic study up front. Scott Adams, Manager of Public Works, he has reviewed the traffic study and agrees with the findings and supports the development as per the traffic report. So, the property is located within a mature neighborhood containing R1L zone properties, and there's no other medium-density developments within the immediate area. There's some R3 zoning within 1,000 to 2,000 feet of the property on Valdane Avenue and St. Peter's Road. And within walking distance, there's an elementary school, a junior high school, a daycare, and churches. Brackley Point Road, it's also classified as a minor arterial road, and there's access to public transit near the Sherwood Shopping Center. It's beneficial for medium-density development to be located within walking distance to these amenities, as residents, they don't have to rely on vehicles when they're close to these kind of amenities. Townhouse dwellings, they also provide an alternate form of housing for residents that live in the city. In 2016, I don't know if you guys would remember this, but there was a request to rezone this property from R1L to R3. I'm just going to go back. And that was to construct two 36-unit apartment buildings. So these were the two 36-unit apartment buildings. So at that time, the board voted not to advance that application to public consultation because the board felt the proposed density, 72 units, was too high for the neighborhood. The board also felt that the bulk mass and scale of the proposed apartment buildings were out of context for the area. Then in 2019, the property owner resubmitted a proposal for a 3-story, 30-unit apartment building and 6 low-rise townhouse units for a total of 46 units. This was the apartment building, and these are the townhouses. So there, at that time, I think some of you were here at that time and at that public meeting, and there was a great deal of opposition to the apartment building. So council, they didn't approve the rezoning application at that time. The current proposal, the applicant, they're asking for far less density. Oops. The development, staff feel that this development is more in keeping in terms of bulk mass and scale with the surrounding neighborhood. He's managed to, along the, adjacent to the single-family dwellings that are currently there, he's located single-family dwellings. These are also single-family, but they'll be smaller lots, and then the same kind of mirroring effect on this side of the street. So the 6 single detached dwellings and 3 townhouse dwellings total of 22 units, and that's quite a difference from the original 72 units that he was proposing. So in terms of landscaping, on each townhouse lot, there's at least a third of property that's allocated to green space. And as I said before, the green space buffer, it's located along Brackley Point Road, and that's to kind of cut down on the noise for the development and also to screen the development from other residents on the opposite side of Brackley Point Road. We would also require a landscape buffer to be retained along property boundaries. Now, it wouldn't be as wide as this one, but any existing residential property boundaries where the medium density would abut it, we would require some kind of screening. So staff feels that the townhouse development is an appropriate scale for the neighborhood and it can be integrated well. And to give residents assurance, the proposed rezoning to R3T for townhouses, the applicant actually asked for that. He didn't ask for an R3 zoning. And the reason why is in the R3T zone, the highest density allowed are townhouses. And we do have an amendment going forward tonight for that. So therefore, once this amendment is passed, that apartment building, like an apartment building couldn't be built on the property in the future if the applicant were to rezone this to R3T. So infill development within established low-density residential neighborhoods are supported within the policies of the official plan. However, the official plan also clearly states that it has to be development that will not adversely impact existing low-density residential neighborhoods. And I've included in the report various policies that would support this development for your reference. The official plan supports mixed forms of housing within neighborhoods to allow for housing choices. But what it says is, I'm just going to read it. However, the official plan clearly states that new development must be physically related to its surroundings and that there should be an appropriate relationship between height and density for new development in existing neighborhoods. So when the developer looked at this proposal, he did consider that, and I did have conversations with him about his previous applications and told him that, you know, when he designed this, he had to look at something that fit in with the neighborhood. So this is what they come back with. So it's staff's opinion the applicant has taken the public's comments into consideration and has put a good deal of consideration into the development proposal, and that this proposal is more in keeping with that neighborhood. The density's been reduced to a total of 22 units consisting of low-rise townhouses and single detached dwellings. However, this area was developed as a low-density, single-detached residential neighborhood, so we still have to consider that. And medium-density development at that time, it wasn't contemplated in the long-term planning of the official plan. So therefore, there may be some concerns from residents still about the townhouses. However, in terms of median density development, the proposal has low impact. It's 16 units spread over 3 lots. So when I say that 16 units, I'm referring to the three townhouses right here. I've also included within the report a quick summary of the positive attributes, neutral attributes, and shortcomings of this application, if you did have a chance to look at them. But overall, staff recognizes there may be concerns from residents with rezoning a portion of this property to townhouse development. However, we feel that it's appropriate to move forward and gauge the public's opinion on this application. So we're recommending for this to proceed to public consultation.
Thank you, Laurel. Does anyone have any questions for Laurel? Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I remember at the public meeting, everyone seemed to support this.
They did.
They did
Townhouses.
not want the big block buildings.
No.
Yeah. So this is a great,
Yeah. I know a lot of people got up and they said that they didn't have issues with townhouses.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, that was a couple years ago, so
Yeah.
if it goes back, there may be issues, who knows, but the most contentious part of that application was the apartment building.
It's a shame to have this piece of property sitting in the city that's not developed, that people can live so close to schools and.
I know,
Yeah.
yeah, it is, like, it's
looks like
in a
it's
prime
near.
location for schools.
I
for
really like what
families.
he did with the cul-de-sac, moving
Yeah,
it inside
that's a
the
great
property.
idea.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, it's a perfect location for families. I mean, you have a daycare right next door to it. You have an elementary school, churches, high school down the road, close to shopping centers. Like, there's a multitude of things in that area that would support families.
And it's to move it to the public consultation.
Any other questions for Laurel? What would everyone like to do? Somebody want a resolution on the floor?
I'll move that we go to public consultation.
I'll second.
Okay, seconded by Bobby. All those in favor? Anybody opposed? So carried. Thank you. And I think you're on deck for one more, aren't you?
I have the bylaw amendments and the official plan amendments, some of the bylaw amendments, I should know. Oh gosh, I need to give you this.
Hello folks, I'm Evan Brown, I'm a new planner with the city, and I will be handling the McWilliams Road application.
Okay. We have Laurel's name in there, so you're...
Yes,
okay.
I'm a relatively late addition.
Okay. Nice to meet you.
Good to have you with us.
Okay.
Baptism by fire. I thought we'd give him one for this application, for
Yeah.
this meeting.
All right, so I'll just dive right in, if that's okay. So this application is for, to develop or to subdivide a vacant lot on, with frontage onto McWilliams Road. The request is to redesignate portions of the subject property from medium-density residential to low-density residential, and from recreational to low-density residential, as well as to rezone portions of the property from a variety of zones that I will explain in a bit, just because it's a little complicated, and I have a map that explains it all. So the applicant, Leroy McLeod, is applying to redesignate and rezone an approximately 18.84 acre property that fronts onto McWilliams Road. Now this shot is the property in back. However, a couple of the lots here have since been developed since this was taken. As the request involves multiple redesignations and rezonings, I'll begin the presentation with a bit of context for the property first. So this is the property outlined in red, as well as this little red sliver or box to the northeast of the property that is also being included because it is also a property owned by Leroy McLeod. So it is currently a vacant field, but comprised of multiple zones. There's low-density residential single, R2S, to the north, medium-density mixed-use residential, MUR, kind of in the middle, the orange, and medium-density residential townhouse, the R3T, kind of the darker brown in the bottom right corner. The future land map, not shown, is similar, with the R3T swath being included in the medium-density residential designation that is part of the orange swath. And the main difference is that in the middle southern portion, right here, on the future land use map, it is designated for recreational use. The variety of designations and land uses associated with this parcel is derived from the East Royalty Master Plan in 2015. The plan originally delineated a future collector road that went from McCrae Drive, which is to the west, not shown, to East Royalty Road. And so that collector road was initially shown to kind of cut right through where the MUR zone is, borders with the R2S zone. And that would effectively segment the property in two, hence why the two zonings are as how they are. However, due to the road placement of the Montgomery Heights subdivision to the east, the manager of public works has determined that such a collector road would no longer be safe, as any resulting intersection on McWilliams Road between the two subdivisions would be offset and therefore dangerous. So, but however, there is capacity on the land further south to provide a collector road in the future, so should such a street be warranted. So uses surrounding the site include a variety of housing typologies. There is low density to the north, east and west in the form of R1Ls, R2Ss, and R1Ns down in the pink here. And then to the south of the property there is medium density residential, which is also MUR, as well as the institutional use of the Allen Montgomery School. So the purpose of the application is to allow for the subdivision of a 91 lot low density residential subdivision. 68 of the lots are shown here in pink and would be zoned as R1N. The white lots up here would retain the zoning of R2S that's currently applied. The red colored lot is an R3T zone. And then this green space lot is not actually part of the subdivision, it just lies outside. And the lot also extends just a sliver this way, which is where the access to McWilliams Road is, but it is not included in this subdivision and will retain its MUR zone. So in order to do such subdivision, a series of redesignations and rezonings would have to happen. So in terms of redesignations, the request is to amend Appendix A of the official land use map of the city of Charlottetown from medium density residential to low density residential for a portion of the subject property. And that would be this orange swath here being redesignated into low density. And then amend Appendix A of the official land use map of the city of Charlottetown from recreational to low density residential for a portion of the subject property. That is not shown here in the future land use map, as this is a zoning map, but it is just down here. As for the rezonings, I've added this map to lend some clarity. It is not located in the report. It's not to scale, it's just of my own devisings, just for the purpose of clarity. And so everything within this dark blue border is shown on this map in pink. And that is the largest part. And the request is to amend Appendix G of the zoning and development bylaw from low density residential single, R2S, to narrow single detached residential, R1N, for a portion of the subject property. So that would be this area here going to R1N, as well as this area up here. The request further stipulates amend Appendix G of the zoning and development bylaw from medium density mixed use residential, the MUR, to narrow single detached residential, R1N, for a portion of the subject property. So it would be all of the orange MUR be going to R1N, with the exception of this arm that reaches onto McWilliams Road. Further, amend Appendix G of the zoning and development bylaw from medium density mixed use residential, MUR, to low density residential single, R2S. And so that would be the portion of the MUR zone located outside the blue boundary that would go to R2S for semi-detached dwellings. And then amend Appendix G of the zoning and development bylaw from medium density mixed use residential to medium density residential townhouse, R3T. And so the plan shows that the R3T zone will be extended to this kind of teal colored section of the MUR zone. And amend Appendix G of the zoning and development bylaw from medium density residential townhouse, the R3T zone, to narrow single detached residential, R1N, for a portion of the subject property. And what that reference is this little strip of brown outside of the blue line will be rezoned into R1N, just as how that this plan is delineated. So the application proposes the extension and connection of Horseshoe Boulevard, Alice Avenue, and Holmes Lane. There will not be any access onto McWilliams Road. As you can see here, there will be houses fronting on the newly constructed street, and this access will no longer be available. So all increased traffic resulting from the 91 lot subdivision would be forced onto McCrae Drive, as this part of the subdivision, its only access is onto McCrae. Without a traffic study, it is hard to determine whether enough traffic would be generated to negatively impact McCrae Drive. The subject property is multiple zones, but predominantly consists of the medium density mixed-use residential, the MUR zone, shown in orange. And the MUR zone does allow for narrow single detached residential, so the R1N, so everything that is shown in pink. It does allow for it. However, the MUR zone imposes additional regulations, which stipulate that on any block within an MUR zone, single detached dwellings shall be permitted only up to 35% of the lot. So what that means basically is the applicant would not be able to get this much R1N lots. It'd only be able to be 35% of the development. 35% of the lots. So the MUR zone was created specifically for the East Royalty being introduced in the East Royalty Master Plan. It was designed to accommodate new development in the form of single detached, semi-detached, and street and block townhouses. So there would be a variety of lot sizes and lot frontages. And as you can see, the lot sizes here are all fairly conformative. 2/3 of the subdivision would consist of similar single detached dwellings on fairly identical lot sizes. The design of the single detached dwellings will be almost identical on the interior and on the building footprint. And the difference between them will be on the exterior cladding, which will be derived from 12 different designs that use a combination of materials and siding orientation. So I've included 3. They're also available in the report at the end. Examples of what was submitted to us. So this is the fronting for the design number 1, has some stone. And then on number 6, you can see that it's vinyl siding, and this is a little bit different. And then there is a combination of stone and vinyl siding in number 11. And all of the other ones that aren't included are a combination of stone and vinyl and siding orientations. In the report, there are also select objectives and policies from the official plan that are listed. Some of these policies and objectives are in favor of the development and some are not. For example, as per the objective in section 3.2.1, this new development would be harmonious with the surrounding development. Because the existing subdivision on Horseshoe Boulevard is a very similar low-density subdivision as to what Leroy is applying for here. However, in section 3.3.1, our policy shall be to provide medium-density housing styles to meet future housing needs, whereas this application is seeking to downzone from medium-density residential and only provide for low-density housing styles. So for further consideration is the application's positive attributes, neutral attributes, and some shortcomings. They are in your report and provided for here as well. So the positives is development of a vacant property, preserves the build form and density of the existing neighborhood, which it would be what is attached there, that subdivision. It provides 2 housing choices, the R1N and the R2S, which would be single detached housing and semi-detached. And the city is experiencing a demand of housing of all kinds. And this proposal would provide 91 new residential lots. Neutrally, the proposed site plan does not connect to McWilliams Road, and all increased traffic would use McRae. The land would be downsized or downzoned from medium density residential to low density residential. And then the shortcomings is that the rezoning is required. The rezoning is required to circumvent 2 design criteria sections of the MUR zone, which would be a requirement for a variety of housing types and a variety of lot sizes. And then finally, a portion of the parcel would be redesignated from recreational to low density residential. So in terms of the East Royalty Master Plan, the application is generally inconsistent. Notable inconsistencies come from section 4.2.3 of the plan, which states that new areas for low density residential are intended to accommodate development in the form of single detached dwellings with a variety of lot sizes and frontages, which these are pretty standard across the board. And as well as the overarching community design principle of the East Royalty Master Plan is to provide a full range of and mix of housing types. So the Planning and Heritage Department, recognizing both the positives and shortcomings, encourages the planning board to recommend the council to advance the rezoning request to public consultation and to gauge the opinions of the public. And I'm here for any questions.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councilor McKay.
Go ahead, awesome. Because I can guarantee you that the people that have $500,000 homes in Horseshoe Hill subdivision are gonna have some big challenges with this new proposed plan of 6 different cookie cutter shaped homes there. 91 new lots with 1 access onto McCrae Drive is absolutely ridiculous. We can't even get my active transportation trail. Now we've got all his new subdivision at the top, and now we're looking at 91 new lots of houses. So it's 91, and then is that including the townhouses that he wants to put in there too?
So
red?
this entire, what's outlined in red,
Yeah.
equals 91 lots. And so I should note that this is currently zoned R3T for townhouses, but it is space that he would intend to, or that he would like to provide for green space. It's just not the part of the process that goes through for rezoning them.
So there is not going to be any access onto McWilliams Road. They're going to have that one access in from Horseshoe.
There will be no access on McWilliams.
And are they count the second access point where they made that little connection to Parent Street? Like you're supposed to have 2 connections, right?
Well, I think what the idea is the manager of Public Works didn't want them to be just offset. So they're looking at in the future when the land to the south gets developed, then we would look at a connector to McWilliams then.
That's an awful lot of houses with 1 access point, like, in my opinion. Anyway, I can support it going to public meeting, but brace yourself, have fun.
Go ahead, Bobby.
I missed what you said about green space. Could you just run through that again?
So the applicant, this is currently zoned as R3T, or a portion of this, and however, the applicant has stated that it is their intent to provide this as a green space. It's just not the part of the process that you would go to rezone it into green space, because it has to go through Parks and Rec to see if it is a parcel that they'd like.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Basil.
Did the applicant express a reason why they didn't go out to McWilliams with another road, entrance to exit?
They
lose a lot or 2, but
They already, because across the street from Montgomery Heights, came out with their access road, from my understanding, first. And it was, so they couldn't match them up. So they're not getting approval to meet. The roads have to meet when they're coming out. So Montgomery Heights got it ahead of them with their 900 lots. And now these 91 lots don't have a way to meet up to them.
So is it that far off, the 2 roads? Evan, are they, in Montgomery Heights, like, is it that far off that we can't make it a crossroads? That's what he's asking for, right? A crossroads?
I'm not exactly sure how far off they are, but we were talking with Scott Adams, and he said that they are not in favor of having an offset intersection.
No, I agree with him.
And
I agree with him. But it should be up to the developer to provide another exit entry off McWilliams. As the councillor from the area, Councillor Julie McCabe said, that's a lot of traffic going into McCrae Drive. And I believe his proposed development on the corner of Norwood and Royal Road, is he still doing that, or did he sell the land?
No, he's still doing that.
Okay.
We're just waiting for.
His plans?
Well, we got his plans, but we're waiting for Parks and Rec to give us a decision on our plan, so. Because he.
So that's also feeding on McCrae Drive too.
Yeah, but see, the reason the manager of Public Works didn't have concerns with this going to McCrae is because, and then part of this funneling to McWilliams is because of the amount of traffic that would be coming from Montgomery Heights onto McWilliams. So he felt that it was balancing out, and then further down, when the land further south gets developed, then we would look at a crossroads there.
Into
Yeah,
Williams.
but when the East Royalty Plan was done, planners that did it, they had Horseshoe Hills sort of designed, like that road that went from Horseshoe Hills that would connect to this piece of land over to McWilliams, almost as a collector road. Like they had it deemed as a bus route, but nobody in Horseshoe Hills is gonna want a collector road going through their
No.
subdivision. So
No,
if we were to look at doing that, that would be something you would do further south, away from any existing subdivisions, so.
That's an awful lot of development.
But it's a lot of land.
Go ahead.
It's similar
Oh,
to West
I know.
Royalty, like when development started there, it's just.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, where Splendid does come out, it's directly in front of a home, so there's no way you could come out of Montgomery, because there's a
it's a home right there now,
$700,000-800,000 home built there.
right there.
I just have a quick question. What's gonna happen if we could go back a few screens? You have that little arm that you had in the red, right there. What's gonna happen with that? Like, hey, it's kind of a shame if it wasn't like Aptos, even if it was just, you could exit the subdivision that way and get your kids to the school, you know what I mean? It doesn't have to be an entrance to get the traffic from Montgomery over,
Yeah.
but even another exit out of there, I'm not an engineer, maybe that would alleviate a little bit of the traffic through where Julie said, down by the other homes, right? So if someone's going, especially now, if someone's going to Mel's, right? You can go down McWilliams, sneak out the back way, go down McWilliams and, do the
You mean
loop
like
around.
a right in, right out?
Yeah,
Just to leave, just an exit,
Yeah, it
just a
would,
thought.
I mean, the problem is with right in and right outs, a lot of times people don't obey them, but, I mean, that would be something we would have to run by the manager of public works. And
Yeah.
also, I mean, if a traffic study were required for
Yeah.
this, then,
I just think anyone going to school with their kids, you wouldn't have to go all the way, out and around. But it's a one-lane road there.
so Chris, just north of that jut,
Yeah,
there's a home in there now?
there's three,
3 of them,
Yeah.
3 lots right there now.
yeah,
The street's full now.
it is,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I would go with that, a right in, right out.
I don't know, what do you mean right in, right out?
So when you come out, you're right out.
Oh, yeah, you have to go out to the right.
Yeah, so then when you come down McWilliams, go south, you
Yeah.
can only right in.
Yeah, you can't go into that subdivision from McWilliams is what I'm saying.
He's
can
saying
only
just
exit.
right out.
Just a right out.
You can just exit, and that would at least get you out a little and less traffic. So if you took your kids to the school and then in order to go back around, you'd have to go through McCray all the time.
Or East Royalty Road. Back up East Royalty Road and in the back.
But then on McCray, yeah.
Still great.
Yeah, it's a lot. And the acreage of it is about, did you say 18?
18 point.
Yeah, so it's required for open space,
Mhm.
it's 10% for cash and lieu, so
Yeah.
that'd have to be 1.8 acres or something.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any more questions for Evan?
No.
Let's go to public consultation only, right? That's all this is for, is to go to the next step.
Yeah.
So do I have a motion?
To move to public comment? I'll move.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do I have a seconder? Chris Fournier. Moved by the mayor, seconded by Chris Fournier, that we proceed to public consultation. All those in favor? And opposed?
No, I'm good with public consultation.
Okay,
I
so
think enough
moved.
information.
This will go into councils for final decision. Public consultation. Thanks, Evan.
Thanks, Evan.
Yes, Rosemary.
Tough one to be back.
Can I just make a general comment
that was
that
complicated.
when
Did a
traffic
good job.
studies are
This is your test.
required, just as a general principle, I wonder could the planning department request that the planning department would hire the contractor to do a traffic study? The applicant would pay for it. I have issues with the applicants paying and arranging for traffic studies. This is just a general comment.
Just as in fear of
In
bias?
principle, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's something for the planning department to take into
Did you hear that, Laurel?
No, I didn't.
Rosemary suggested that perhaps in the future, if a traffic study is required, that the planning department actually make the arrangements and have it done but the applicant then has to then pay for it, but it's the department that chooses what engineering company does the, it was just Rosemary's.
That's actually how we used to do it. We would develop terms of reference, and then they would have to shop it to 3 consultants and get quotes, and then they would take those quotes and the proposal back to the city's traffic authorities, which was the police and public works, and they would determine who would do the traffic study. It would be the city that would deal with the consultants, and then the developer would pay for the report.
I think that would be a more independent type of process. I mean, I can see this going for a traffic study, and we've had other traffic studies, but I just think it should be a more independent process than the applicant arranging and paying for the traffic study to be done.
So how do we move that file forward? Do you just take it back to confer with your manager of
We
planning?
would have to discuss that with the manager of public works and the police department, the deputy chief or the chief, and determine the process and go from there. But I mean, I think we could easily use the old process, which used to work fairly good.
So can we have the minutes reflect that they're gonna go back and you can report back probably at the next planning committee meeting? That would have to go to planning committee, would it not, your worship?
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
So,
Thank you,
Madam Chair,
Rosemary.
did we discuss or did I miss something? Will there be a traffic study for this proposed project? There should be.
It's not us that would determine that, it would be Public Works and Police. However, when I spoke to the manager of Public Works the other day, when Evan and I spoke to him, it didn't sound like he was requiring one, so I can have another conversation with him and see.
Could we recommend as a board that a
Um,
traffic study be considered as part of the process?
The only thing is, I don't think we required that for Montgomery or any of those other subdivisions because it was all done through a planned process. The reason with this, if he were to proceed with his current zoning, which is MUR and R2S, we wouldn't require it then. It's just when he's splitting this up into more lots, or I think it does turn it to be a little more density, then there's a little bit more concern. But I think we would have to get a recommendation from the manager of Public Works on that, because that would have to be supported. They know, Public Works and Police know the traffic situation more so than the planning department, because that's what they're working with. So we would have to take our direction from them on that.
Thank you.
Okay.
But we can certainly have a conversation with them and find out if they do feel it would be warranted.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I guess you're up next, Robert, with zoning and development bylaw housekeeping amendments.
Here comes Robert.
Here comes Robert.
So good afternoon, Planning Board. I'm happy to be here tonight to answer any questions that you might have for the proposed housekeeping amendments, as well as some other additional amendments that we've thrown in the bylaw for review. Considering that the members of Council and Planning Board have seen this presentation a couple times now, if it pleases the board, I can just go directly to questions. If there's any questions or clarifications, I can handle that, and then we can proceed forward.
Does that work for everybody? Okay, go ahead, Councilor McCabe.
Thank you. We did receive an email today from Arsenal Brothers Construction around the indoor amenity space to include private balconies. So I read his letter, and I know it said, yeah, so you're talking about there needs to be a common room or something in these apartments, right? Which I see makes sense in like senior homes and stuff, but I also saw sense in his email where if you're trying to build affordable units for people, as we go back to the minute we start using space for these common meeting rooms, it's taking space then for the developer part. So is there any way we can find a compromise if it was like for a seniors unit or something like that? But if you were building a regular apartment, I don't know why we would require they have to have that common room where I think we could look at balconies being considered their private space or common use.
So one of the changes that did come out from having that email from the Arsenal Rose was that we were going to retroactively apply that requirement January 1st, 2022, and in the meantime, maybe work out some details.
Okay.
So discussions with them on perhaps in lieu of them offering a common room that they then provide balconies on those units. Essentially, the reason why we were proposing some sort of indoor amenity space is because we received feedback from residents actually in apartment buildings where they stated that due to COVID restrictions, they weren't able to host some events within their own units. Some of the units are quite small, some like one-bedroom units. So there was questions on creating these common rooms in order to not only rent them out for resident use, so if they have like a gathering with family or something like that, but then also for other residents within the building. They might have a games room or a craft room and things like that. So just to do some programming. So that's basically why we inserted that indoor amenity space, was just from some of the feedback that we received from residents who live in multi-unit buildings. We've also done a jurisdictional scan. It's quite common. Halifax does this. There's also amenity space requirements for Fredericton. As well as Moncton. So it's not uncommon to see some of this requirement, and like I said before, it primarily gets into the fact that some of these units are just small, and so they don't have that space or capacity to host events.
Anybody else? Yes, Rosemary.
I just wanted to support it too, Robert, because I think a lot of seniors are living in apartment buildings, and the ability to gather, come together is an important part of people staying active, being healthy, so I think it's a good idea from that perspective, being social.
I agree in seniors' homes, like the seniors' apartments for sure, because they use them all the time. I was just thinking, the ones down in Kensington Road might not be geared to seniors, could be wasted. Just something to talk about.
There's also one thing I should also include. This is just from some preliminary research that I've done myself. One of the options that we could look at doing is if there is already like a community facility or some sort of amenity that could be, a direct substitute for an indoor amenity space in the actual building, possibly could exempt that requirement. So similar to how we exempt parking reductions, so we do parking reductions if you're within so many meters of a transit stop, we could look at providing a buffer for any apartment or multi-residential building next to a community center or complex where that amenity is offered off-site. We could look at doing an exemption that way. That would then perhaps incentivize infill and intensification within areas that actually do have amenities. So we could maybe even see some direction of growth to those areas. So just another point that I want to make.
Yeah, so it's in or around a community center.
Correct.
That could be an exception to the rule. Good point.
Correct. And it could be applied to outdoor amenity space as well. Like if they're within a park, certain meters of a park, could certainly, we would rather see more densification infill on that lot, and then to actually use outdoor amenity, like existing facilities that are there. So that's something that we would add into the amendment itself. And those are conversations that we will have with developers as well. And that's why we wanted to put that retroactively applied later, just to give us some time to do that consultation.
I wonder if it could be linked to the affordability too, since that's kind of the issue. They can maybe make it more affordable if they don't put in that space, then maybe that's a good compromise.
Yeah, no, and that's another thing we could include as a bonus to incentivize affordable housing.
As acting chair, am I allowed to ask a question?
Yes, sure.
I didn't know.
You could summarize our questions.
So attachment K, I've had a lot of kickback about parking lots not being allowed to use gravel. And I'm just wondering if there's been any more thought around that.
So, as I've stated in the previous, the reason why we put in that amendment was a request from the manager of Public Works. So the manager of Public Works has brought up issues that they've had with larger parking lots, so anything that would be greater than 4 parking spaces. So 4 spaces or greater would be required to be paved, and the issue that he's been running into is that they use so much gravel that not only does the gravel start entering the right-of-way and starts chipping away at the asphalt and starts causing damage, but it's also created situations where through runoff events, you can get accumulation of gravel in catch basins, and then that kind of plugs up the city infrastructure. So his request to our department was to require any large parking area to be paved. And yes, I did look into asphalt millings can be used. That's
You can use asphalt.
yeah, it's quite appropriate.
There's also a concrete application that is porous, so it does allow water to seep into the ground and recharge the water table. It's the only problem I have with too much blacktop. It doesn't allow recharge of the water table. It flows it all into ditches, and ditches go out to rivers and cause erosion and so forth. That's some of the concerns.
Anyone else have any questions, any additional questions for Robert? So you're recommending that we move this on to council, is that the idea?
Yes.
I will move it if you keep in all the stuff we talked about with that section on the common room amenity, further exploration on that piece.
Seconder?
Just
Yes.
just before you finalize the amenity space, we used to require it in the bylaw up until about, I'm going to say 2-3 years ago, when it was amended. Someone had done a number of amendments. And at that time, it was sort of a simpler formula. We just based it on a percentage of the building, the square footage of the building or the lot area. So the amenity space could be either located within the building if it was a common room. You could consider balconies as amenity space or outdoor landscaped areas amenity space. So that might be a way to look at it as well. Your regulations.
I move that.
Okay.
Because they were agreeing, developers are agreeing the balcony space is okay, right? When I read his email.
I didn't see the email, but I know that we did count that because, I mean, if you have a balcony, that's, or a deck outside, you do use that for, that's your outdoor living space. But, I mean, that should be something maybe staff can look into some more if the board has some concerns.
But I think what Rosemary was saying, and I agree, is that we're looking at common spaces, common areas for people to get together. A balcony is for yourself, the family, whereas a common room is you bring people together. Correct? Is that that's the amenity space you're talking?
Yeah.
Which could be based on the square footage of the building.
Exactly, and they included common rooms for that amenity space in the prior bylaw.
Yeah.
But the developer wasn't required to provide an amenity space. If he did, it was factored into the percentage.
What's that again?
The developer wasn't required under the old bylaw to provide a common room, but if they did, it was part of the calculation for amenity space. And I guess it kind of depends on your age group. If you've got a building that has a young age group, they're not so interested in common space, but older people do want that common space.
Especially with our weather from September until
For sure.
It's minus a million in January.
Well,
Yeah,
common
if you
rooms
go up to
in
Allen
homes
Street
are
there,
very well.
Harley Street apartments there, a lot of those have common rooms, and they're used on Friday afternoons.
The Emily, all these places, they gather and they do
Yeah.
lots, and that's a more senior population that
Yeah.
come together or have their grandchildren for Christmas dinner and stuff, but.
I will provide some additional information on that. Some of the people that actually residents that did talk to us were of a younger demographic. Yes.
Wow.
And that was to host functions and
Beer houses.
They didn't get into the particular activities, but one could be left with your imagination of what that could be.
So what's the resolution then?
The resolution is we're moving forward to what he's
Move forward and
recommending.
accept the council, yeah.
Okay. with the exception that we're going to do some further discussion around.
Just a little bit more exploring on that amenity.
Okay. So moved by Councilor McCabe. Do we have a seconder? Okay, seconded by Basil.
What is the motion again?
That we're moving to council for final approval of the amendments of these bylaws, with the exception of the amenity space to do further exploration on that one. Is that correct?
That's correct, and I guess I'll work out the wording with Ellen, but I guess that the other idea was to also look at perhaps a buffer zone, so if it's within either a community center or a park, perhaps there could be a trade-off there.
Just to not pigeonhole it in so tight,
Yes.
a little bit of flexibility.
Okay. So we have a mover and a seconder. All those in favor? And those opposed? Okay, so carried.
One more?
No, two more. You're up, Laurel.
Okay, so, I'll take the same approach as Robert did on the last amendments as well, because I think we've reviewed them quite a few times. But basically, they are for the MUR mixed-use density residential zone, just to clarify the uses. The R3T medium density residential townhouse zone, and that was to remove apartment use from that zone. And to basically renumber that zone, because we're taking out the apartment use and repealing that. So we would have to renumber that section of the bylaw. So if there's any questions on that, I can answer them. Quiet one. Crickets, crickets, crickets.
No questions for Laurel? If not, someone have a resolution?
I'll move.
Okay, moved by Bobby and a seconder. Chris, and seconded by Chris. All those in favor? And those opposed? Okay, so carried. One more, Laurel.
And the last one is for an amendment to the official plan to clarify the terminology of the official plan designation for concept plan area and comprehensive planning area. As you know, we've had some discrepancies with these terms being used interchangeably, and it's caused some confusion. So we are removing concept planning area and replacing everything to comprehensive planning area, which also aligns with the terminology in the zoning and development bylaw for comprehensive development zone. So on the map, it's hard to see, but basically there's two designations right here, and they were right underneath each other, and they describe the same future land use designation. So we're just removing this one here, concept plan area.
And what's the other one? Future?
The other one is, it's going to comprehensive planning area. We're removing concept planning area.
So, Laurel, back in early 2000, was it not a comprehensive development area?
Comprehensive development area is the zone. So in the bylaw, it's comprehensive development area.
Okay.
So that's why it gets kind of confusing, because you've got comprehensive planning area, concept planning area, and then the zone is comprehensive development zone.
Planning area, concept, comprehensive development. Great.
Yeah.
Simplified.
Yeah.
I'll move that.
Okay, moved by Councilor McCabe, seconded by, all right, and all those in favor? Any opposed? So carried. Okay, any introduction of new business?
You did a fine job. I think you did
Great
a
job.
great job. I think
Adjourned by
you
Councilor
should be doing a
McCabe.
really good job in this position.
Yeah,
I think
seconded,
we'd like to keep you on.
seconded by, who's seconding the adjournment? By Basil, and all those in favor? Okay, everyone have a good evening. Stretch your legs, councilors, and ready
So
for
our
the
next